the membership model, the subscription model is a big part of it. And it's, if I don't experiment with it, I would feel like I'm letting the entrepreneurial side of me down a little bit, because it seems like I should give it a go to see what works and see what doesn't. I've actually never experimented with any kind of membership or subscription model, but I will try something. I'm just not sure what exactly. So
probably have to be quite expensive, I think, to begin with.
No, I think the way to do it is do it by tiers. So you do something that's free, then you do something that's super, super cheap, then you do something that's super expensive with a huge gap in between. So ultimately, you can grow with the free. There's going to be enough value add that's disposable for the first tier, but that's kind of a gateway drug to the top tier, which might be the concierge experience, I guess.
So the top tier could be consulting with Hung. The mid tier is Hung joins your team meetings and contributes. The bottom tier is photos of Hung.
Yeah, very nice photos of Hung. Sorry, we're talking about OnlyFans, folks, because it's become the platform I'm fascinating with, but not for the reasons you think. It is because it's a petri dish of a really new business model, which I think is an avenue for a lot of people that are into recruiting Brainfood. Like, how can you make money? How can you run a business essentially by either creating, curating, modifying, doing something with your own content, particularly stuff that you're passionate about. So definitely something we're going to explore in future course. In any case, we are live, folks. So welcome everybody to episode 77 of Brainfood Live on Air. We're bringing it to you every Friday. I don't think we've missed one this year, so super excited to bring it to you again this week. We've got an amazing show for you today, because we're going to be talking about a topic that's kind of gone from cool to cliche faster than you would have realized. Culture fit. That's something everyone was on about 5 years ago. That was what we were meant to be recruiting for. And then in a blink of an eye, it turned into something that we were not acceptable to use. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to explore what the hell culture fit's all about. We've got some amazing guests to come and join us with that. And it's going to be a very exciting show. But before we begin, we always start off with a bit of AV. So a quick sound check. I see a lot of people already on the chat screen, but if you can't hear me or you can hear me, just please say hello on the chat stream there. There's a bit of a delay, but I want to make sure that the audio and video is working okay. So if you can hear me on Crowdcast, please say a quick hello. We are multicasting, folks, on LinkedIn Live. Are we LinkedIn Live? Yes, I think we are. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Shit. All right, I knew something was going wrong. It doesn't matter. If I'm on LinkedIn and I'm live, can you please say hello and indicate on LinkedIn to say I'm there, and I'll stop swearing on air, because I need to be on there. And finally, Facebook, if we are broadcasting to my 3,000 member Facebook group, plus the 3,000 members this week, please say hello there so you can communicate with us and let us know that you can hear us okay. All right, everyone's fine there. That's fantastic. Okay, so before we begin, we always start off with a big thank you to our sponsors this week. Our sponsors this week are a new business which you may not have heard of, but I believe you will do in the coming months and years. They are a fantastic product called Platypus. And in fact, the CEO of Platypus is going to be joining us later for this talk, because they talk about how do you measure culture? Are they a business that can quantify culture? Let's get it away from it being some sort of intangible thing. Can they actually put some numbers behind it, crunch some data, and give us valuable insights that we can actually use? I've seen their product and I know their founder. I suspect they're on their way to doing just that. So check it out, Platypus.io. They are a great product. You can just get on their free demo, Platypus.io, should I say. Do check them out. As I say, we'll be speaking to Nico in a few moments. Okay, I'm joined as ever by my co-host, who hasn't been on the last 2 weeks, actually. But we've downgraded to Adam Gordon. Adam, how are you doing, mate?
I really love the way that I get like emotional abuse every time I either come on or don't come onto this show.
I think that's why I do it. But I do wonder whether it does hurt you. And if that's the case, please tell me, because I'll stop it, because it feels like bullying.
No, genuinely, I've got Stockholm syndrome. I really enjoy it. Keep. Hit me if you want. I don't mind. Whatever.
Keep the abuse. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Adam, firstly, let's talk about some action on your end. So there's some movement in and out of Canada ID, wasn't there? Some interesting stuff personnel-wise at senior level. Tell us a little bit about that, man. I think we should know about this.
Yeah, sure. So one of my closest professional allies, Billy McDermott, who's worked with me twice, left our business on Friday. Took him out for lunch yesterday. We're still great friends. Time was right for him to move out of recruitment for the first time in 15 years. And I think, when something like that happens, and quite important happens, because he was really covering tech, product, and customer success. You kind of realize that it was like Southampton, for anybody that knows soccer analogies, it was Southampton trying to build a team around Matthew Letizia, right? It's just, it's not the most scalable way of doing things. And Billy could have moved into one of those three areas and focused on it. But anyway, we had a CTO join us 2 weeks ago, Mike Hughes, who's been CTO of some very big businesses, including CRM businesses, which is pretty useful for us. And we've got a director of customer success starting on the 1st of October, who has been talent acquisition director at Standard Life, Commonwealth Games, Royal London, Weir Group. So we've got a lot of TA expertise about to come and join our business. And so that's all really cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of bittersweet, because Billy's a good friend of mine as well, and shout out to Billy if you're listening to this. Good luck in your next job, man. Recruitment's lost his cybersecurity's gain, because he is a fantastic person, particularly on BD, customer service, anything client facing. He's just a fantastic person to have in your squad. So you're lucky, really. I suppose we've got to look at it and say, it's great that you're able to work with him, not in one, but in two companies. And yeah, sometimes good people leave, that's just the nature of the way it is. And good luck to him, and great luck to the new people joining. It sounds like also an opportunity to reconfigure the senior team there, which looks like you've toured up with it. So, okay, fantastic stuff. In between all of that stuff, did you have time to read the newsletter last week? Because maybe all of this kind of shenanigans might have prevented you from doing that.
No, I absolutely did. I always prioritize recruiting Brainfood, and so there's a few different things that I want to talk about. The first is I do want to just quickly finish off what we were talking about around OnlyFans. And I absolutely agree with you. It's such a fascinating business model where you get people to basically subscribe to have a part of your life, effectively. And there's so many different applications for this in all areas. You've got, it's the passion economy. You've got something that you are good at, or people want from you, and you just create a subscription model for people accessing a piece of you in whatever way that is.
That's it. And OnlyFans is obviously reasonably famous, I guess, for soft porn, if you like. It's kind of a platform which is generally, basically nice looking women sending, nudes and videos and stuff like that. So there's that kind of element, which I think is not necessarily the most important aspect. What is the case that is interesting is that it's possible to generate a decent amount of revenue from it. And it's kind of an example of, I think it's more like the YouTube model, where basically you have people who are able to generate an audience. In amongst that audience, you're going to get a small minority that are super fans of this show or super fans of this creator, and they're prepared to support the continuation of that. And good luck to all the people who are doing good there. The lady, by the way, I've just shared the Twitter thread on this. Basically, there was a day in the life of one of the creators, I forget her name, did a day in her life to say, hey, this is what I do. And truth be told, she's not doing a huge amount of work in terms of hours spent. You're looking at 3-4 hours a day, something of that type. And she's making $100,000 a month from guess how many subscribers, folks? Put a number down in chat stream. guess how many subscribers you would need to make $100,000 a month. I want to see some numbers there because what I'm about to say might 100,000, correct? $100,000 per month. How many subscribers do you need to make that number? And by the way, what she's doing is I mean, I haven't checked it myself, but it is not like particularly, hardcore stuff. It's page 3 type of level. So 5,000 from Jess Hayes, good guess. 50,000 from Francis Carter, terrible guess. Any more guesses? 60 to 70 from Adam, 50,000. 10,000 from Ivana. Any more guesses, anybody? Who's guessing on Facebook? Anybody? No, nobody. 300 from Matt. Oh, that's way too low, surely. 5,000 from LinkedIn.
Okay. Some good responses here. Not far off. Quite a lot of people and not far off.
Not far off. So Adam, do you want to tell them how many?
Yeah, it's 3,000 subscribers, which is $33.33 per person per month. That's it.
So 3,000 subscribers, folks. And this lady can make $100,000 a month for, I would say, 10 hours of work, like not a lot of work. So in terms of you're going to chop that down to, per hour earnings, it's ridiculous. Brainfood has got 23,000 subscribers. And I tell you, I'm not making $100,000 a month. I can assure you on that. Yeah, exactly, Jess. Everyone's in the wrong industry, right? So crazy numbers.
Her name was Ayala, and I'm wondering if she's a big Tim Ferriss fan, because he was one of the founder, one of the people who started telling everybody, okay, you need to just get really smart about how you spend your time and monetize your time. And she may well have been a big Tim Ferriss fan and then worked out what she can do on OnlyFans.
Everyone is doing the Tim Ferriss model. Everyone is applying Tim Ferriss in the sense of crunching down the amount of effort for return. So automating everything, just reducing the amount of time you spend the time on stuff that you enjoy. But I think she's also doing like the Joe Rogan method as well, where build an audience of people that are super fans that just love what you do. And if you have that, then find a way in which you can monetize it in such a way that people are prepared to pay. And like I say, I don't think she's an extraordinary character per se. I don't necessarily think she's the most well-earning figure on that platform. I don't believe so. So I would imagine people with more subscribers would earn more. But anyway, it's an example, right? So check it out. I think super interesting business model.
Two quick aspects I wanted to mention about this. I think it's a slightly dangerous model as well, because if you feel like if you're paying $33, it's not a huge amount of money, but if you're paying $33 every month to have a higher tier of access to this person, and you're spending that money, you've got to have some kind of a emotional connection to actually spend the money. You build up an emotional connection with a stranger, and that's going to cause a few psychological challenges, I think. I think there's a slightly worrying element to this. It's almost like buying a wife, and that's a bit concerning.
Right. I do think that this is it's not straightforward by any means. And there's all kind. This is why I didn't necessarily want to talk too much about that aspect, because we can go deep dive in all of this, and what is the what is the category of work, and what is okay to do, and all this type of stuff. And I'm not qualified to say all that. But you're right. I think what you're doing and what the OnlyFans creators are doing is basically letting the audience into their lives in a certain way, in some cases quite intimately. And there's probably some sort of psychological cost to that. So, careful. But brave new rule.
One other thing I was just going to mention was there is a sort of a link to Patreon in terms of people getting creators getting funded to do things. That's very different though, because I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. Feels a bit like begging. Patreon, it's a different type of a connection that you build with the people who pay.
Plus, Patreon is very much about donation as well. So the difference with OnlyFans is that the content that you pay for is a premium tier. It's not public access. and it may well be very much like a private thing. I've just seen all we need is Hung and Adam. I'm going to stop reading. There's no more to read on the back of that, Lindsay. No, Hung and Adam will not do anything more than Brainfood Live, and I assure you on that. No, you can give me $500,000 a month. That ain't happening. Okay, let's move on. What else is interesting?
Well, I'm into tracking candidates, so I really enjoyed the article, which was about like employers are tracking you. Let's start tracking them.
Right.
I didn't actually see any evidence of how you go about tracking the employer particularly, but I want to just say about this, it's really important because yes, employers are tracking people who work for them. Yes, employers taking a kind of marketing automation approach are tracking potential candidates as well, but they're doing it for the benefit of the candidate. They're doing it in a lot of ways so that the individual gets a more personalized experience, and so that you can really personalize the connection you have with that individual. So it depends on your personal attitude towards people knowing things about you. Nobody's sitting there like tracking a candidate and going, that individual is this and this and this based on that. It's just data that serves up, a bit of information to help employers do things better.
Yeah, we should do a Brainfood Lab particularly on this, because it's worth diving into the philosophy of it, because I think we've gone to the point where we instinctively think data collection equals bad. But when you think about it, it's like, is personalization bad? I remember your name is Adam Gordon. This is not a bad thing that I remember that. In effect, I've collected that data, I've put it in my head, and that means our relationship might improve because we don't have to introduce each other at the beginning of every interaction. I know your name. And really, when you're talking about tracking employees or tracking candidates, we're kind of doing that at scale. And you come into this consent issue and all the rest of it, but Adam, I never asked you consent for me to be able to remember your name. And it would kind of be absurd to think about that. Like, it's your name. You need it to basically interact with people in society. So I think
I am more than happy for Amazon to know and recommend to me things that it thinks I might be interested in. I'm more than happy for YouTube to know and recommend things, videos that I'm interested in. It sends me boxing videos it knows I'm going to be interested in. And I don't want to have to, go and seek that type of stuff. And This is obviously a very, it's become a bigger subject again this week because of the new documentary on Netflix, which actually gives you zero additional information. It's just different people saying the same things. And I can see Jess's comment there that it's just data is a worryingly blasé comment in today's world. That entirely depends on your personal attitude.
Yeah,
and
we need to maybe touch on that when Jess comes in, because actually when we're talking about culture, and Nico's product is about collecting this data, right? So it's like, okay, at some point we have to grasp this nettle. And do we go to a place where literally we consider data to be sacrosanct? In which case, I think we're going to end up stopping doing a lot of the things that we think are inherently okay to do. Like, for instance, to personalize a message. Why is that a bad thing? Why is it you need to collect data to do that? Without the ability to do it, then, okay, dear sir, doesn't work. Anyway, one more, mate.
Yeah, magic email. Again, another one that I'm sorry, you probably get a filter bubble when I comment on here because I want to talk about the things that I've found most interesting. But if anybody's not familiar with GPT-3, it is a open source machine learning platform which allows you to do a whole load of things that you couldn't do previously. Magic email is an overlay into your Gmail or your Outlook, I'm not sure, but certainly your Gmail. And what it allows you to do is just click the button that says Magic Email. You put in, tell Hung that I'm looking forward to seeing him on Brainfood Live. It then constructs like 3-4 paragraphs, tops and tails it, puts in a relevant subject heading, and then it takes your one sentence and it learns what you mean, and within a couple of weeks it starts being able to actually write pretty insipid emails for you, but it's really interesting to look at.
It's fascinating. GPT-3. I've been tracking that. You can actually check it out on Brainfood Larder. Just type those words, those letters in, and you'll come up with a bunch of articles. But people are going nuts over it because it seems that you're able to, as a non-programmer, simply instruct it to do things that then produce human-like communication. And one of the applications that came out that I noticed was Magic Email, which was an email. I didn't actually realize it would construct the email, so that was an interesting innovation. The bit I saw was that it would read the email and summarize it for you. So let's say someone sends you a big block of text, which thankfully I don't think many people do these days, but it will end up picking out, the action words or whatever and the call to action, and then tell you, okay, this person's trying to sell you some software or whatever. But you can see it'll be, you can see it'll eventually become an interface in between you and the other. It'll help filter stuff out for you, and I can totally see people getting into it. From a recruitment point of view, I think that's a huge implication, right? How much time are we spending being that filter? If this type of technology does seem to work, it will find its way into software, find its way into applications, and recruiters will sort of lose this part of that process. In which case, as we've talked about before, recruiters always have to move up the value chain as an ongoing concern, because this technology is right here, right now.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's the sort of thing where there's either two ways this is going to go. Either 3 years' time, this is going to be in our lives and we're using it every day, or it's going to disappear without trace. But it's certainly one of those things that are worthwhile knowing about.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's get on with the topic at hand. Before I bring Jess and Nico on, I'll ask you the question, Adam. The title is kind of a provocative one. And I actually, I'm not of a fixed mind about this. I've got different views on it, and I want to explore it with you guys. So firstly, culture fit is bullshit. What's your instinctive reaction to that phrase?
My instinctive reaction is, and I think the people coming on are more knowledgeable on this subject than I am, but my instinctive reaction is that that's correct. It's a diversity issue. If I want to build a company where everybody has a homogeneous culture fit, they're probably all going to have, it's more likely they're going to have similar backgrounds. It's more likely they're going to be the same gender. It's more likely they're going to be the same ethnicity. They're going to have the same socioeconomic backgrounds, because people like that have got more in common culture-wise. It's just a fact. I think that the alternative is building a company of people that have got more similar values. I think that is something that has a lot more validity than culture. But like you, I have, to an extent, I've got an open mind on this, and I love to hear people's opinions.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that because I'm a bit of a critic of the idea that suddenly you can switch in the word values and that makes it okay. Because it might just be like you're taking a sort of off one semantic hat and sticking on another, but you're still hiring against what you like ultimately.
Values transcend gender, they transcend ethnicity and everything else which makes humans different from each other. I think. So
does culture, though. I mean, culture is not gender specific, surely.
Well, I mean, I think that if you go to a gathering of people who are black in certain parts of like southeast London, and the culture of the the volume, the pace that people talk at, a lot of things like that would be entirely different to a group of people probably white people in Hampstead. There's people have got different ways that and these cultural things are I mean I think there are differences culture-wise between people of different genders and ethnicities, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to necessarily get boiled down too much on the gender side of it at this point, but I was just thinking, look, first thing we've got to do is actually define what we're talking about, because oftentimes a big part of the problem is that we're using terms interchangeably. I'm guilty of this, and we don't share a common understanding of these terms. So before we get any further on it, let's bring on Jess and Nico. And without being like massively definitive, we'll try and, for the purpose of this conversation at least, confirm what we mean by these terms, and then see how we go. Oh, by the way, while Nico and Jess are coming on screen, folks who are on Crowdcast, if you want to ask any questions, please use the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen. That's where we're going to get to for the questions, okay? So please put them in there. Oh, there she is. Jess, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. And there's Nico. How you doing, Nico? Say something, man.
Hi.
Okay, great.
I'm good. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah. I think audio and video is great. So let's start off with some introductions. Jess, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly just introduce yourself, like who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, my name's Jess. I'm the VP People at Whereby. We are a remote company that builds tools for remote working. Our primary tool right now is a video conferencing and collaboration platform called Whereby.
Amazing. You know what? I've been an early user of Whereby for such a long time. I want one of the appear in, if you still have the old logo. Any swag with appear in.
We have heaps of old appear in swag. I can find some and send you some when I'm in Norway next.
Because I was using that in the Workshape days. That was our communication sort of technology of choice. Ahead of Zoom, better than Zoom. Anyway, that's my plug for Whereby. Okay, Nico, for people who don't know you, can you introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, Nico, French. I always start with this because otherwise you're going to pick up the accent. Based in Copenhagen, I'm the co-founder of Platypus. We started that 18 months ago. And before this, I was Chief People Officer at Revolut, Director of Recruitment at Pecan, at Unity. And I've been playing that lovely game for about 15 years now.
Yeah, amazing. Welcome to the show, you two. I think debut for both of you, so a real pleasure to bring you on and talk about this amazing topic. So I want to talk about a few definitions first, particularly because I think people might have applied different meanings to these terms, and we'll end up just arguing for no reason. Let's argue for the real reasons. If we have a dispute, let's make sure at least we're disputing over the same thing. So let's define what the difference between culture and values is. I am vague as F with that. So I think I think it's a bit of a body swerve, to be honest with you. So I'm a bit of a cynic also, but I'd love to understand what people mean when they say we don't do hire by culture fit, we actually do by values. And I'm thinking, are you just like swapping your hats and doing the same thing? So Jess, let's go to you. How would you define those things? Are they separable in this way?
Yeah, I think the way that businesses have co-opted the term culture, I think, is kind of a bit of a weird, insidious move. And it's been used by, I think, a lot of bad actors to define something that isn't reflective of your ability to do a good job. And that is, I think, what a lot of people get a bit wary of when they hear the words culture fit, which is like, can you go to the pub with someone? Can you go on the plane with someone for a trip? These kinds of questions get brought up. I remember at Box, one of the questions was, could you go on a 5-hour drive with this person, which is just a kind of banal question now. But I think culture, to me anyway, is a kind of composite of the behaviors that you exhibit as a team and that are encouraged, and that usually are encouraged in the form of processes and policies that you create. So a very tangible set of a piece of work that you do as a HR and leadership team that ultimately dictate and control, or at least encourage some kinds of behaviors and are underpinned by a value. So I think culture is kind of a composite of these things, or the outcome, I should say, the symptom of the kind of tangible work you do based on the values. So I think interviewing on values is a perfectly legitimate way to kind of assess what ultimately culture is, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. So you're saying basically culture is the consequence of the actual behavior. So there's a bunch of people who behave in this kind of way at a company level. certain behaviors will be rewarded, certain behaviors will be penalized. The output of all of that in a usually undefined way is what we might describe as culture. Okay, cool. At least that allows me to position it, the relationship between these terms. Nico, let's go to you on this. I'm particularly interested in your view because you've obviously, done the recruiting job. You've worked that way. You've probably thought about culture. I'm sure you have when you're doing the CPO work. But now you've actually distilled this into a product side. So you've thought about it even further, I think. So how would you describe the difference between culture and value? Where does all that sit?
So I agree with Jess that this word is just overused and people are using it from there's no clear definition. My definition of culture is that actually there's a big difference between mission statements of an organization, and I think that's what Jess described around common values freedom, respect, whatever stuff. What the example I always use as French, it's liberté, égalité, fraternité. Great mission statement. If you ask anyone about French culture, that's not the words that are going to come up. Strike, wine, cheese, complaining, that's probably going to come up. But liberté, égalité, fraternité is a framework. It's a North Star. It's a guideline of this is how we would like to behave as an organization. This is the goal. This I call mission statement. Company culture, I call everyone bringing their value to an organization. Everyone has different values. I have different values than you, than Jess, than Adam, right? And I bring my whole to the organization, and I'm going to be vocal or less vocal, but I will bring my values to your organization. This mass of values, this aggregation of values, I call company culture.
Yeah, there's some interesting points there. Definitely, and what I like about that concept there, Nico, is the difference between the rhetoric of it and the reality of it. And I think we're all sensitive to that idea where, we might have a view, this is the spoken presentation of what we think the culture is, but the actual behavior, to your point, Jess, what's actually going on is different. That leads me to think about another thing. Maybe there's an aspirational aspect to values in this case also. So it doesn't necessarily need to describe the current reality, but it's like we are striving to get there. And maybe that's an element that we could kind of introduce to the thinking as well, where, values is, it could be a statement of current, but it's almost a statement of to be. Like, this is the goal, this is the journey of the direction we're going towards. Okay, super interesting. So 5 years ago, let's rewind the clock on this, okay? 5 years ago, 2015, seems like a decade ago, but there was suddenly a super popular wave of hiring for culture fit. I remember a bunch of startups come up and started to exactly try to do this. And it went from cool to cliche within a blink of an eye. Can you kind of open this to all of you as well as yourself, Adam, because you're part of that kind of journey. We're all part of trying to build better stuff at that time. So why do you think culture fit fell out of fashion?
My opinion on it is because there's a lot of really bad recruiters and people out there that hear these words and put in place bad things. They read something on Medium, or I don't think if Medium was even existing back then, but they read an article about what Google does for culture fit, and they're like, oh, we'll do that as well, because then that's us measuring for culture fit, which is just rubbish. So it ended up very quickly devolving into this kind of meaningless, buzzwordy, non-strategic part of the role of people and culture. And then I think a lot of good people, and I'm sure all 224 odd of us on this chat are all in the good camp. But there's a lot of people out there that had to kind of undo all that bad work and say, well, no, it's not about the fucking snack wall, and it's not about the ping pong table, which is the cliche now, is culture's not a ping pong table. Culture's, what's 10 feet from your desk or whatever. There's a new cliche coming up every 5 minutes. But I think it's this kind of the work that gets done by people that don't really have a good grasp on what it's meant to mean, or are doing something because it's, kind of, I think my biggest word of this year has been performative, right? So many people out there doing performative work in the people and culture space. And I think that was a big reason. A lot of people doing performative work around culture building that didn't actually do anything. It just sounded really nice at the time. It quickly got on everyone's nerves. works.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Performative. So performative means doing something which you kind of hope will have the outcome, or on the surface looks like it has some kind of outcome. So, for example, ping pong table is the perfect example of performative culture work, right? Put a ping pong table in the room and you're telling everyone like, oh, we're cool. We like you having a good time, taking a break from your work. But does putting a ping pong table actually do anything about encouraging people to take breaks from their work or to work together with their peers? Well, not really, does it? It's a performative piece of work. It doesn't do anything. And then going out and talking about that, or at the time, what was the cool thing to do, putting pictures of engineers playing on the ping pong table on your careers page and mentioning in the benefits, we have a ping pong table, as if that means anything. It's all performative. It doesn't actually do the work, because a lot of the time, the work to actually build whatever you're trying to say or think the ping pong table says is actually kind of a little bit boring, to be honest. It's something like building a framework around flexible working. Like, that doesn't sound as interesting as having pictures of engineers playing ping pong tennis on your careers page, right?
Right. So
that's
Jess,
not what I. Sorry, just let me quickly say that's not what I. That's not at all what I would consider to be what companies are trying to do when they're talking about culture. I look at a job description which starts with, you will do whatever it takes to smash your targets, and that's what I think about as culture. Culture is around how you expect people to work, more so than performative related elements to it.
But would you not say that putting something like, we expect you to smash your, I don't understand how you think that those two things are, like, on the surface particularly deviate from each other?
Because one of them's really superficial and the other one is about actual culture, which is we expect people to. One of them's just like window dressing, and the other one
exactly performative,
it's totally
right?
Fake. It's totally fake, and the other one is genuine culture, which is we expect people to work from 7 a.m. till midnight.
Yeah, precisely.
And do anything. So that's what I would term to be real culture.
I don't actually think you two disagree.
I don't think it's
my assessment is
that's word.
Yeah. My assessment is that you don't disagree. I've got that's a really good breakdown of it, Jess, which is great. I want to defend the people who do performative culture stuff just a little bit, because I ultimately think it's about time pressure and capacity also, because it seems that, to me, I'm a big defender of recruiters generally because I think they're overworked. They're in the job, they've got like 100 requirements to hit. That is what they're judged on. Everything else is like, oh, they're like that. The CEO might say, hey, that's super important priority, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, they're looking at how many people have we hired this month compared to how many people are still, how many jobs are still vacant. And because of that reality, I think all of these other initiatives slide down the priority scale. And what ends up happening is that well-meaning recruiters and people will do something, and it's almost like, right, we've got to do something on this topic, on this area, just cover our ass on that because we've still got to hire all these people. So I would just say, as a slightly more generous way to interpret sort of the existence of performative culture building, I feel sorry for them. I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I think they've got more time. Okay, Nico, you seem to be very critical of that comment.
I mean, like, I literally, nothing against what Jens and Adam saying. I'm like, every time I see like we have a ping pong table or we do Friday bars, I want to vomit, as simple as this, because like we're still at the stage where people put this on their job ads, and I think it's ridiculous. Because like Jess said, that's not culture. I mean, it's not even a perk. I mean, like, cool, you have this, that's awesome. That's not going to make me happier. That's not going to make me work harder. What are you offering here? It's like pointless.
I think that's talent.
Talking about real stuff.
Is that not talent attraction?
Yeah, so but no, it's bullshit.
But remember,
attraction.
this is the question here originally was, why do you think culture fit became cliche? And the answer to that is because a lot of companies are out there talking about these things as if they're culture when they're not, right? Yeah. So we're trying to explain that. Doing this performative
in my mind,
work.
it didn't become cliche because of this, and because it's overused or whatever. In my mind, it's just the wrong word. If we go into like the difference between the mission statement, the static, the 10 commandments, and actual culture changing all the time, like just semantically, you don't fit in something that's fluid. Culture is not static. So first of all, let's not use that word. Let's use add or whatever you want to use. And let's again use the right words, right? The second thing, Adam, like before we joined on, I think you mentioned something around like using culture fit as something that's actually very discriminative, and it is. Like, I mean, looking at somebody and saying you're not fit, like you don't belong here, is it's just wrong, right? And then that means as well, if you're saying like,
is it wrong how? Like wrong how and why?
You tell me I don't fit in there. Like, are you actually having a culture that's trying to be inclusive and taking the best out of your people, or are you just saying I just want soldier 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, and people that are like just like this? I mean, and if that's your culture, then I guess culture fit is the right thing. But then we're going into a completely different type of discussions of what type of culture should we have in organizations.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This takes us into like business competitiveness, and I think there's been enough studies that show that if you have an inclusive organization
and diverse
you're going to be more competitive. However, this is also about short-term and long-term thinking. So short-term thinking, I'm going to create 50 people who are just like me, who will all smash their targets. Yeah, 12, 24 months, it'll probably work. So it entirely depends on your organizational objectives.
Really good point. It may be about the business maturation, where the cycle of the business is, etc. Bear with me on 1 second, Nico. I'll come to you in a sec. Because there is a short-term cost to attracting people that are heterogeneous to building a heterogeneous culture. And the short-term cost is you need to be adaptable. You need to understand. You need to learn. You need to do all of those things. It's the nature of like building a new team with a bunch of different skills and different personalities. That will be a short-term investment in cost. Now, in the shorter-term way of doing it, it's just hiring your mates. Because you've already worked with them before, there is no cultural cost. You know how they operate, etc., zero diversity. And the short-term gain is that you'll be probably productive faster. However, the long-term, medium to long-term penalty is that you may end up being very susceptible to groupthink. And actually could be quite vulnerable to a catastrophe that you can't anticipate because you're all looking at it from the same angle. So maybe the maturation.
I don't agree with that.
I know you don't.
I don't agree that. I don't agree that hiring your mate is going to make you faster or whatever. It won't. It's probably going to make you faster, like in terms of working, but you're not going to think outside of like hiring an echo chamber. Hiring people that think like you and are going to be exactly the same as you is how you kill businesses.
Depends on
that's
context.
how you kill
in the long term, Nico, you're right. You're right, Nico. In the long term, but in the short term, that's not necessarily Hyung's not necessarily wrong, because if you do hire. I mean, I could go into a lot of recruitment.
I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying I don't agree with him. That's all.
Sure. So I could go into a lot of recruitment agencies. Everybody looks the same. They're all performing really well. Is that good for building a business? A more, what's the word?
So
a more
are they looking
sophisticated
the
type
same?
of organization?
Do they actually all? I mean.
Yes.
Are they behaving the same? Are they looking the same? Or do they have the same values? Again, like I wouldn't agree on this. I wouldn't agree on this with you because like you have your assumption and your bias of what you see into them, and you think like, okay, they're all the same. Just because they're like compensation driven, career driven, that's two of the like multiple values that we can look at. So some of their values are common. They're aligned on some aspect of their culture, but seriously, like culture is not just 2-3 behavior points. It's the same concept with the T-shaped employee, right? We want employees that are like touching multiple things and very good at one thing. Culture is the same thing. You have loads of values. There's 2-3 values that you're going to bring that are extremely strong on you. For me, I have kids, flexibility is probably the most important thing for me, right? So I bring this. Does that mean that I work only with people that have flexibility as one of their core value? Absolutely not. But I'm going to be heavy on this one.
So I think there's an interesting introduction there because of this idea that actually there are so many dimensions to understanding culture. Part of our problem, even with the problem of trying to define it in a mission statement, is that we end up maybe overly simplifying the culture in an effort to put it into a catchphrase. In an effort to create a brandable description as to who we are as a business, it almost is the case that we end up chopping off other bits of the culture and ignoring that in an effort to try and create a sort of a bit of marketing collateral. So it may be something that it requires a lot more forensic analysis. You can't just casually describe it. But this is where we might talk about tooling at some point and how we might support it, how we might get better at trying to figure out and capturing, what culture is. Because as far as I know, it's been amorphous even in the academic space as to what culture is. It's been a term that has, I think we have broader agreement generally in terms of what it is, but it's very hard to nail down because it's ultimately a combination of thoughts, behaviors, values, a lot of intangible things that exist in people's minds. So, Adam, you about to say something? Oh, no, that's fine.
Listen, one, I just wanted to add to this. There's another aspect to this, which is that when you get something that everybody sort of understands, you end up with so many different perspectives on it that actually it can end up quite unhelpful. And this is why we end up arguing about a lot of stuff in recruitment, because recruitment is entirely different depending on what type of recruitment you're doing. Your everyday and the activities you're doing can bear no resemblance to somebody else's. You talk about recruitment together and you have a massive argument, but you see the world in a completely different vantage point. So it's kind of a little bit like that, this particular subject, but it's definitely one that we need to continue to talk about.
I'll tell you something. We have an instinct to universalize it. I mean, I think that is a human thing where we have one case. The instinct is, is this a rule that can be applied universally? We try to do that. And I think when you see commentators have arguments online in topics of recruitment HR, it's because both parties want to universalize their particular perspective. Both of those perspectives have an element or a grain of truth if you take that angle, but it may not just be universally applied in every space. But okay, let's move on to talk a little bit more kind of practically. So I think a lot of people might be joining in this kind of chat to understand a little bit more about how do we hire people that are going to operate successfully in our business. Let's put it in those terms. I think there's no recruiter or no employer that wants to hire people that do not succeed in their company. That makes no sense. And they want to know how to get better at that, but they recognize that, the old way of thinking that face doesn't fit, not only is it an effective way to make that assessment, it's also unethical, and it's also preventative from attracting maybe exactly the types of talents that could take their business to the next level. So how do recruiters do a better job of recruiting people that are likely to be successful in the company? Is there a way to do that? Because we know that looking at CVs and experience is not the way. We know that, doing basic stuff like an interview, that's full of bias. You're going to end up with this cultural fit bias in large part. What is the way? Is there a theory here? Jess, let's go to you with this one first.
So, I mean, I really hate interviews. I think pretty much every recruiter is going to have a fairly similar opinion, hopefully, in that the interviews are, the closer to the bone you get, or the closer to the way the machine is made, the closer you see how flawed the process is. But from my perspective, some of the things that we've done at Whereby to kind of help make better decisions is like the basic stuff that you read in that Who book, like set up a rubric, make sure you've got a clear understanding of what the role is, what the mission is, what you need, have a clear understanding of what it takes to be successful in your business. So, we are very non-parental. So I'm never going to write you a job description. Like that's a job that a lot of people need to do themselves with their manager. So if someone kind of needs that kind of thing from me, then I know they're probably not going to work particularly well with us. They'll find it really stressful and not a psychologically safe place to work. But then in the recruitment process itself, I do the best I can to set up a very clear, there's no tricking involved in our recruitment process. We share all the questions we ask ahead of time. We do like 50% experience-based questions. So give me an example of a time you did X, and 50% situational. And the reason we do situational is because people from underrepresented backgrounds get given less chances to have experiences in their lives. We all know that, it's a fact. So if you've been given less opportunity, then you're going to have less experiences to talk about in your interview. So we make sure that everyone has an opportunity to talk about a completely fabricated situation, which we share ahead of time and give a good structure around what kinds of things we're probably going to ask and talk about. And then we pay everybody to do a work exercise. Nice. And we pay everybody to do that exercise and show what they can do, to show their potential, show their ways of thinking, And we make sure we pepper that exercise with the kind of things that we know they'll bump into in their day-to-day. And I don't mean practical things. I don't mean like if you're a salesperson, there'll be some tough numbers you'll need to turn around. It's more like if you're a people person, the test will be littered with ambiguity, because a lot of the time I'm not there to spoon feed you. I'm busy, I'm doing things, we work remotely. So ambiguity is something you can be very comfortable with. Yeah. And if someone comes back to me with 50,000 questions, really confused, feeling distressed, I know straight away that their psychological safety is going to be at risk for me bringing them in to our culture. And that's what it is, right? It's our culture. We have a culture of ambiguity because we are remote, because we're distributed. We have a culture of very non-paternalism. So having these really tangible ways to kind of check this and then also check it back then. I always say, this is what I read from you. How does that sound? How does that feel? And if the person says, no one's ever said that about me before, that's really surprising to me, let me talk more about it, then I have reasons to doubt the way I've tested it. But I think trying to like kind of trick someone completely from like a black box is a really strange way to recruit whether or not you think they're going to be right for your team. So I think being very upfront about how we're doing that is the best way for me anyway, that I found so far.
You know what? I love everything you've said there, Jess. Particularly the idea of paid work. You know, I hate the idea of, hey, you know, do the 6-hour test on the weekend. It's like, what? This guy is like a highly paid developer. You know, why is he spending like 6 hours worth of the developer time? Is not cheap. So you know, that kind of stuff is always insane. So great that you're able to do that. And the company obviously is signaling a lot of its cultural sort of values in that case anyway by committing budget for this activity. Quick question on a practical sense before we move to Nico on this. How do you control the budget on that? Because presumably you can't just throw these assessments at people randomly. They have to be rationed in some way because of the cost involved. So how does that person get to the point where they are assessed?
Can I just ask an additional element to that, which is also, do you have them work on real life things that are useful for your company?
So everything's fabricated. So it's actually something I did in McCann, which I thought was really interesting, is we built kind of all the information about a fake agency. So I did a lot of work with somebody that had done like a Harvard business MBA, and we helped structure this fake agency called Carmen Shaw & Smith, which had all these fake clients, and they had a fake acquisition, and they had all these like a big document about like what this all meant for the company. And every single question or practical we posed for candidates was based in this fake world. So you read this kind of like maybe hour-long Wikipedia page of all the points you needed to know, and then your test was based in this. And it was a really good way for everybody to kind of remove and take their bias away from themselves, because I found a lot of people in my interview process were setting tasks based in like L'Oreal, for example, and then saying, well, L'Oreal will never pick this, the practical's terrible, L'Oreal would hate that. And it's like, yeah, but this person doesn't know that. They haven't been working with L'Oreal for 10 years. So that's the first thing, or the second thing I should say. And the first thing around budget, I do the best I can to only put as few people through as that practical test as we think will be successful. And I make it very clear to the people that are involved in that that's a commitment from our side, and that if we're putting you through to this practical test, we're very serious about you, to try and gauge how serious they are about us. We don't pay people's usual day rate. We pay a much lower fee, to be honest, mostly for tax purposes. There's like a tax threshold you can do as an invoicer without having to have issues on both sides. But it's more about a respecting people's time thing. And we also don't expect work quality, like work level quality work in a lot of instances too, right? It's like a kind of skeleton framework around what we expect. So the budget's quite easy to control. We expect and forecast about maybe 3 people per role going through to this practical stage, which if you're thinking about, like, I think it's some around 2,000 Norwegian kroners, which is about 250 pounds, something like that, per person. So if you think about that, 3 people per role, 10 roles a year, that's actually fine to hire people that you think are going to be really good fits, and you've got a good. Also think about the value that you get out of the feedback. You get to really make sure the person understands your way of working. You've seen their work on a problem that you may, something that you may see come up in the future. It's just
the employee branding for you. The fact that you give yourself a good reputation on the market by, like giving money for people to do testing. That's great as well.
I think that the cost is so minor that if you had trouble selling that in, I'd have bigger questions around the person that didn't believe that it was a good expense than I would around the expense itself. Like, I would be doubtful of the CEO that said, I don't think this is a good way to spend money.
Yep. By the way, if you want to calculate the cost of a bad hire, you can check. There was a tool that was in last week's Recruiting Brainfood, which actually you can pump the numbers in there, and then it'll calculate something horrible for you, and then you can present that to your boss, so you can get budget like Jess has. Whereby. Okay, Nico, go to you with this one. And I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time now, suddenly, because this topic's been so big. But very quickly. I'm hiring for someone who's going to succeed in my company. That's the only thing I care about is the truth. Now, how do I go ahead and do that? What's the best way to do it, other than using Platypus, of course? But what is the way from I'm interviewing this person? Let's move the tech to one side. I have no tech. How do I go ahead and do this?
I think the step one would be maybe to accept that it might work, it might not work. The data point I have is like 46% of people that join a new job are gone within 18 months. 89% of those people, it's because of culture, or that's what they say anyway. That's the reason that they bring up. So there's a higher chance that it's going to fail than it's going to work. And I think recruitment, like you said, it's not I like to, every time I compare it with cooking, again, probably because I'm French, and like you can do it very well, or you can completely fuck it up. And we all play with the same tools and the same ingredients, and results very much vary, right? So how do you make sure, how do you limit the risk that you're not going to make this a failure? I had a talk yesterday at Tech Barbecue around like hiring for startups and how critical it is around, especially like not fucking up on your first hires. I think number one is like a hard look in the mirror about like, what am I? Who am I? What's my mission, right? What's my why? And how do I function? And I think most of us think we know each other, but self-awareness, actually, it's like common sense, not that common, right? So that's the first one. Second thing is like the hardcore definition. I liked what Jess is saying around if you need me to write the job spec, we probably have a problem as you with being a manager, right? I mean, like if you're not capable of describing what the person is going to do in that job, we have an issue. But let's assume I'm the one writing the job spec, so that makes my life easier. When I'm going to sit down, what I usually do, when I screen, and screening is really like, to me, the most important part of the recruitment process anyway, I usually start with telling people, like, because I love the sound of my own voice, I'm going to start with the first 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you, you can ask me whatever you want. You have 15 minutes to ask me whatever you want about the role, the company, myself, why I'm doing this, and so on, right? And this works well because...
You're saying you give the candidate the opportunity to interview you in the first 15 minutes.
To start with the first 15 minutes. Like, blank table, yes, you have 15 minutes. You know why? Because number one, the question this person is asking is giving you all the bullets you need. They're going to ask questions about things that are important to them. They have 15 minutes. If they ask you about compensation, boom, that's their driver. If they ask me what's going to be my day-to-day job, how is my manager, where can I be in 6 months, 12 months time, you know that they're career-driven. They're going to give you so much data. People asking questions is giving you lots of data, number one. Number two, what works as well is that you basically, if you are, let's just assume we're all honest and genuine people, and you answer honestly and genuinely, people are wired, let's assume, people are wired that they will replicate this. They will mirror you. If you're sitting across from me and you see that I'm genuine and passionate and honest about the way I describe my organization, when it's my time to ask questions, we broke the ice, you're going to be genuine and honest. I'm going to go way further than this, right? I find that for me, this has worked so well in terms of the screening, because these 15 minutes where you feel, God, it's a waste of time and everything, actually break the ice, sees that the person, like, I'm going to describe the job better. And you build relationship. And the screening is all about building relationship, right? It's all about killing the awkwardness of like, okay, we don't know each other. I have your CV. You're probably looking for a job. I'm looking for somebody. It's awkward. And we do this all the time. Like, we're recruiters, we're interviewing all the time. But candidates, hopefully they don't do this all the time. I hope for them they don't do it all the time. So like we need to put them in the best situation possible. The best situation possible, in my experience, is to be genuine, honest, give them more information the real information that they want. Let them ask questions.
I also think just on the 15 minutes thing, one of the things I like to do at the beginning of my interviews, especially if I'm like kind of getting towards the last round, is the first thing I ask is like, what's your feedback on the process so far? How's it been? Like, what is your experience like? How are you feeling about this? Like, what's the last couple of calls been like? How can we do this better? And straight away, the approach starts being like, well, actually, that one before, I felt confused. I didn't know who that person was. So I felt like it was a bit of a strange interview. all of a sudden, when you start on that from that place and then work back and say, great, thanks so much for your feedback. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. People feel a lot more open. They understand that this is a two-way thing, and it makes the call a lot easier from that point, I find.
Okay, so just to encapsulate that, basically, both of those points I think are really important. And the one point I want to talk about is that it kind of equalizes the relationship between the candidate and the recruiter. And we often forget that because we do, as you said, Nico, we do it every day, all the time, everyday kind of experience for us. But it's like we judge them as being worthy or not for the job. And imagine that kind of stress if you're a person that is feeling judged into this situation. Recall the last time you were a candidate. I guarantee you it was not a pleasant experience because you were being judged in this way. So if you provide the agency, push it back to say, look, you can say what you need for that period of time, I think that does a great job of equalizing that hierarchy. And at the same time, as you say, build relationships, because it's much easier to build equal relationships actually than hierarchical ones. No one likes to be subservient.
When you get to the bottom, like you will break the ice, you will understand the person better. If the whole idea of culture fit, I don't like the term culture alignment, like finding whatever we want, discovering the person's behavior, culture, value. If that's the whole idea, then you need to break the ice fast, quickly, and you need to be genuine and honest so that they can be genuine and honest. And that's the only way.
Yeah, cool. Listen, what's happened here is a unique scenario because I'm actually running out of power and I need to get a power cable. So Adam, what I need you to do is to go through the ask a question sections while I go ahead and do that. Can you do that, Adam? Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so listen, we've got 3 questions in here. So the first one is cultural fit is a potential diversity problem for permanent hires. What about for contract and temp and interim hires? Jess, is there any big differences?
I mean, again, I think it's what you're looking for in terms of culture fit, right? The way I like to think about it is like, is it culture safe? Like, is it culture wavelength? Is it culture compatible? Because if someone needs a lot of structure, if they need quick answers to questions, if they need, the right to make decisions by themselves or the permission to take risks, like these things, if they need them and the company is really ambiguous, doesn't like risk, you're going to have a huge problem no matter what their role is, right? So I think culture fit is, again, culture fit's a weird word, but I think culture fit, it does work. Like it makes sense if you are thinking about what culture actually is, which is the very tangible things that your company expects, does, makes how you feel psychologically safe, right? Like I would say in a personal life, I have an amazing culture fit with my mum, but in my professional life, I would rather be dead than work with my mum. I actually think I love her, but our culture fit working together is a nightmare. We have complete opposite, different ways of working, right? And I think that's what you need to think about is like, it's not a diversity problem because people that look just like me, almost identical, my boyfriend would say, which is kind of terrifying, don't work together. Like I don't work together well with my mum. I don't work together well with a lot of people very similar to me, but there are a lot of people that are very different to me that also love ambiguity, that love ownership, that love taking risks. That's what you should be looking for. And that doesn't matter which type of role you're in, whether you're there for 1 day or 6 weeks.
Do you know, you've said this, I just want to quickly respond about something that Jess has said a few times is around the ability to thrive in a kind of ambiguous kind of environment. And this is something that has occurred to me a lot in the last 6 months. And, if you need process for everything, then there's certain types of organizations that are going to be great for you. If you really don't want process and are great getting up every day and deciding what you need to do, then there's other organizations that are going to be right for you. And this is a big, big one, the concept of ambiguity.
Yeah. On that note, by the way, I think this is where we need to bend it back to technology and digitalization, because I think it does really help us understand truly what a culture is rather than what people perceive the culture to be. So for instance, I've always thought about, everyone loves to say we're a flat hierarchy. Everyone loves to say, you know what, we're process-free, we're a results-driven company. It's like these become cliches that everyone wants to attach themselves to, but what is the reality of that? And I just thought, even back in my recruiter days, I was thinking, you know what, you could maybe do things like, just like count the number of meetings everyone has per week. What is the frequency of meetings per week per person? That might tell you something about the culture, because if everyone has loads of meetings all the time, then we can say, okay, maybe they're consensus driven in some way, or maybe there's a bureaucracy to manage that other companies do not have, good or bad, or whether that may be. Same with email, same with Slack messages, whatever. Like, what is the volume of transactions going through here? What happens? Is there a lot of chit chat going on? Fine, that may be good or bad. I'm not making that assessment, but the digitization might help us better understand what style of culture that is. And we're talking about, is the person going to be psychologically safe in that space? Then we could figure that out with using some of that data. Okay, anyway, we're really running short on time. So I want to get on and talk a little bit about technology. And this is where I want to touch a little bit on your product here, Nico, because I came across it, I think maybe even a year ago, when maybe you talked to me about this really early on, actually. I forget when we had this chat. But it's about trying to quantify the culture, isn't it? It's like trying to figure out in a more, like, how do we understand culture better? And how does that work? I mean, how do you get to the point where
it came like the idea literally came from years of recruitment and being so tired of finding what I think is a great candidate, bringing the candidate to the hiring manager coming out of the interview, amazing candidate, ticking all the boxes. It's not a culture fit. And you're like, yeah, based on what? Like you said, you don't see yourself having a beer with that person, going for like a 5-hour ride with that person, because that's not culture fit. That's personal bias, right? So that's why we wanted to build something that would solve or help solve that problem. And it's like bringing data into this, right? Like, how do you assess what culture is and so on? And then what I said early on, like, mine is not liberté, égalité, fraternité. Culture is the added value of all French people complaining. And therefore, the idea of Platypus is very much this. It's building what we call a Platypus sprint for every employee anonymously, and that's the rule of the game. The only way people can be genuine about something is to be anonymous. There's a reason why voting is anonymous, right? Anonymously, every person is going to build a print based on their values, and then we aggregate all this data using an algorithm that we've built, being able to give an organization a cultural map of this organization, being able to show what are the values that are going to drive the culture of your company. And then obviously the beauty of it, because big data, being able to filter this per location, department, tenure, gender. We talk about inclusivity and diversity. If you don't know, every program based for inclusivity and diversity is based on assumption. It is, because you don't have the real data of like what is core to a minority group. We have this. If you think about it, it's not about culture fit anymore. Like I said, it's about culture alignment. Where are we aligned? What's working or not? Where are going to be the differences? That's Platypus. That's what we've been building.
I think that's super interesting that everyone has a print, because I think that's also critical, isn't it? Because then you can get a true, you can make statements like, overall, even cross-company and cross-department comparison. You can say, oh, the sales guys or the sales team are a little bit more like this way because, we can say that. Whereas, maybe the people in marketing are...
We've all experienced this. We've all experienced, like, you have a different culture in marketing, in sales, in tech. And again, that is no. It's different people with different values and behaviors linked to those values, because like behaviors are systematically linked to your values. So being able to drill down on this, being able to communicate better, analyze better, where should I invest my money as an HR person on training and development? I mean, we all agree. We all say like recruiters are super busy. We're busy all the time. HR is not better. I mean, like they have 50,000 things to do and they don't have enough time to focus on everything. So it's about bringing the correct data. That's it. And like you said, everyone has a print, because the difference between the mission statement, liberté, égalité, fraternité, is that that's defined by the top. That is trickle-down culture, if we want to talk about this. Right. It's right. The execs, top execs deciding this is what we stand for, that's our culture. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's extremely important to have a mission statement. But then obviously top management needs to follow and behave rightly, because otherwise you break everything. So very, very important. However, culture is everyone, right? And it's like everyone has an impact. Whether you're super high, you have more impact on the culture, of course, because of your decision-making power, behavior, and everything. But the longer you've been in the organization, the more impact you have on the culture as well. I mean, you can literally be an office manager, you don't take strategic decisions, but you've been here 5 years, you know everyone by their first name. Telling me that I don't have an impact on culture is wrong.
Can I say one thing? Like even a recruiter, operational recruiter, ends up growing their influence the more people they recruit.
Of course, and they're biased. Yes.
Yeah. I noticed that in my first recruiting job internally, because I was a previous agent, like we all are, and like you place somebody, you leave, no big deal. But the big difference when you're working in-house is that you start recruiting people and you're like a nobody at the beginning because you've recruited nobody, but then you start recruiting 10 people, and then before you know it, you built this department, and then you had this, and everyone talks to you because you were part of bringing them on board, and you can feel that influence grow. So, I think this is a fascinating part of how we think about culture. It is dynamic. Culture is diverse within a business. So within the description of the value set that you have, there's going to be different interpretations of that, and it will reflect differently, manifest differently in different places. And I think we have to recognize that it's dynamic. It's not something that is statically captured. So, for the folks that I think with the best will in the world go away on an offsite and, with the plan of coming back with a bunch of values, I think that's laudable, but probably a bit crude way to try and get there. And it might lead you to, possibly the wrong implementation sometimes, because you've taken people out of their real working day for a start. You've given them the task to do something which suddenly interferes with whether that's true or not, and then they've come back with something that sounds good, which is why all of these values that do come back tend to sound a little bit cliche. So anyway, cool. Adam, did you manage to get through the questions, by the way? Any we need to answer?
No, I think there's two questions we haven't answered, but I think we have answered them in other ways.
Okay, cool.
Is the transactional nature of contracting with recruiters part of the problem? It's kind of we're kind of going a little bit back, to be honest, on things we've already kind of covered.
Right. Okay. And maybe we don't have time because we are running massively over time. And I do thank everyone for joining us for Brainfood Live on Air. Obviously, this is not a topic to cover in just 1 hour. And we definitely need to do a part 2 on this. And maybe narrow down on a particular topic within this rubric. But I hope you've enjoyed the show, folks. If you have, give us a comment, give us a like, or whatever you can do to tell us that. If you've hated it, please tell me that as well, because I need the feedback. About feedback. I don't have any feedback.
You don't need to give any feedback on me. We all know I'm only here because nobody else will do it.
That's
Every single time I get told
unpaid
that.
Labor.
So
unpaid labor.
No feedback
unlike
on me
Jess,
needed.
Unlike whereby Hung Lee doesn't have a budget to get Adam Gordon here. It's like, who's available? Do you have a pulse? Yes, get him in.
Wow, that's a nice
okay.
little compliment for all of us on the live today. Have
Yeah,
a pulse, you're in.
Pulse on a webcam, that's all I care about. Boom, you're in Brainfood Live. No, thank you everyone for paying attention. I really had a good time. I learned a lot. I think there's so much more to learn. That's probably my big takeaways. I need to dive deeper into this topic and get closer to it. I hope this inspires you to do the same as well, folks. We'll be back next week, of course. We are going to be talking about something a little bit more practical. We're going to be talking about tech recruiting, specifically tech recruiting, in what has changed in the pandemic world with regards to tech recruiting. Have recruiting life cycles shortened? Is it quicker to hire people now than it was before? Is it harder? What do people care about? What are the packages or benefits we need to offer software engineers for them to be interested? We've got Manjuri Sina from OLX joining us for that. We've got Ala Pavlova from Miro joining us for that. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you follow the channel and we'll see you on that show next week. Okay, that's about it. So thank you, Adam Gordon. Thank you, Jess Hayes. Thank you, Nico, Blier, Silvestri. Can you actually, how do I pronounce your second name? I call you Nico because I can't do this.
Actually, like the full name, and that's a beautiful way to say goodbye. The full name is Nicolas Alain Michel Julien Blier Silvestri.
Goodness.
Au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir.
That's a mic drop. That's a mic drop right there. Okay, if you want to check out Nico's product, by the way, please do check out platypus.io. I'm going to share the link again. They are our sponsors this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend. Jess has already left because she's got better things to do. Thank you, Jess. And everyone else, we will see you here next week. So see you later, everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Hope you enjoyed that one, folks. Thank you. And apologies for the power surge. Not power surge earlier, but I didn't bring my charger plug. I even stopped speaking English now. Anyway, we will see you next week.